I was working a club that we part-owned in the West End of London. I ended up hitting this guy with these brass knuckles, and the only reason I hit this man was to impress an underworld boss there. And as I watched this man's head explode, I just really believed I had killed him. Oh. And as I drove home that night, I thought, what have I become? That I could kill someone and not even care.
I'm a soldier for Christ. I'm a soldier for Christ.
Back to the Terry and Jesse Show. Want to join the conversation? Call 888-526-2151. Now here's Terry and Jesse.
Blue Collar Catholic Radio, the Holy Hour of Power. We got John Pridmore, a former gangster. Well, just tell like it is. Yeah. He was working for Satan, okay? Gangsters work for Satan.
Yep.
And now he's
working for Jesus.
He's working for Jesus. Now he's terminated employment with Satan. He's now part of Team Jesus. This is a man who's on fire. And this is a man after my own heart, because this is a man that's traveling all over the world trying to bring people to a knowledge of Jesus Christ. John, tell us from the darkness that you came from.
Sure. So as I was saying, that my parents at the age of 10 told me I had to choose who I wanted to live with. And I think I made an unconscious decision inside that I wasn't their love anymore, because I really thought if you don't love, you don't get hurt. Oof. My mum ended up having a nervous breakdown, went to psychiatric hospital. My dad remarried, and my stepmom thought the best way of bringing up a kid was by beating them senseless each day. So that just added to my pain and misery. At the age of about 13, I started stealing because I wanted someone to take notice of the pain that I was in. But because my dad was a policeman, it just added to the beatings. At 15, I was put in prison, youth prison. I left home at 15. My only qualification was stealing. Wow. So that's what I really did. At 19, I was in prison again. And another thing that changed then was the way I dealt with all the abuse I suffered as a kid is I just turned the abuse into anger. So I was always fighting. So in that prison sentence, I spent most of my time in solitary confinement. And it was a bit like having a mirror put in front of you. And because I hated who I saw in that mirror, I seriously wanted to destroy that person. So I seriously thought about taking God's greatest gift, my own life. But thank God he was there and he didn't allow me to take my own life. But I came out of there more angry and more bitter than ever. And I really thought what you want out of this world you take, because no one gives you anything. And I started bouncing around the East End and West End clubs of London. And I met some guys who seemed to have everything that I thought would make you happy. They had the sports cars, they had the best girls. They walked into a club and everyone stopped because they had this power, all for the wrong reasons. And I wanted that power. I wanted that, I expect that respect. So I started working for these people, but before very long I wasn't working for them, I was working with them. And these were the people who ran most of the organised crime in London. So to my shame, I was involved in major drug deals, protection rackets, vicious crime of all sorts. There was a time where I would never leave my house without carrying a gun. Now I would never leave my house without carrying a rosary.
Praise God.
And I think it's far more powerful than any gun I've come across. But I obtained, as you quite rightly said, Jesse, I obtained everything that the world says makes you happy. I had the penthouse apartment, the sports cars, more money than I could spend. But inside there was this overwhelming sense of complete emptiness. St. John Paul II said that the person who gives us the desire to search for him in our hearts is Jesus. And no matter what we receive from this world, no matter how rich, famous we are, we will never be truly satisfied or fulfilled until we have that personal relationship with Jesus. Well, because I didn't have that personal relationship with Jesus, I tried filling my heart with the pig food from the prodigal son. I was on crack cocaine, smoking dope like it was going out of fashion, drinking really heavy. I was also very promiscuous. Some nights I'd wake up with girls I wouldn't even know their name. And the more promiscuous I became, the more drugs I took, the more my soul seemed to die inside. Wow. Till eventually I remember one girl I lived with for 6 months. She knew no more about me the day she moved out than the day she moved in. Because even though everyone looked on me as being a hard man, inside I was a scared man, scared of being rejected for who I really was. So I wouldn't share my feelings with anyone in case they rejected me like I felt my parents had rejected me. I was working a club that we part-owned in the West End of London. I ended up hitting this guy with these brass knuckles, and the only reason I hit this man was to impress an underworld boss there. And as I watched this man's head explode, I just really believed I had killed him. And as I drove home that night, I thought, what have I become? That I could kill someone and not even care. That's how dead I had become. I could actually take someone's life and not even care. And even that scared me. Because I thought, you know, there was a time when I was a kid I wanted to help people. And here I am just hurting everyone around me. And the only trinity I was involved in was the unholy trinity, me, myself and I. I came in this normal night and I became aware of a voice speaking to me in my heart. And I knew that voice was God. And I knew I was dying there and then. And I knew I was going to hell. And, you know, I've heard a lot of people say to me, when I meet God, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Well, if this is anything to go by, there's no two-way conversations going when you meet God. I knew I was dying there and then, and I knew I was going to hell. And it was just and it was right. And I cried out for another chance, not because I was sorry, but I didn't want to go to hell. And I said the first prayer I'd ever said, I said, up to now all I've done is take from you, God. Now I want to give. And as I said that prayer, I felt the Holy Spirit, the love of God come pouring into me. The only person I knew out of faith was my mum. And I wouldn't see a lot of her in them days. I might give her an expensive present when I felt guilty. But this night I went round and told her what had happened to me. She said to me she had prayed for me every single day of my life. And 9 days before this, she had prayed a novena to the patron saint of hopeless cases, St. Jude. And it was on the 9th day of my mum's novena that I truly believe I heard the voice of God speak to me in my heart. And I never forget the tears rolling down my mum's face as I told her how I had found God, probably washing away all the pain and hurt that I had caused her. I ended up going on a retreat, and to be honest, just so your listeners know, my idea of a retreat was on a beach, Bacardi Breezer, joint, nice girl, just chilling for a couple of weeks. And I thought I could do with an holiday, so I'll go on this because the emotional stress has been a lot. When I got there, it wasn't quite like I imagined. And there was about 250 young people. And some of these young people were coming up and hugging me. Well, I don't know if you know ex-gangsters, but we're not into this hugging business yet. Like the girls, it was fine, but the guys,
yeah,
please.
I don't think so.
You don't hug other men down our way. You get slapped, you know what I mean? But that was the
Unless
first
you're putting
thing
them in
I
a
got.
chokehold.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And the first talk I remember I heard was, give me your wounded heart. And, you know, as I was listening to this priest speaking about how every sin we commit is like a wound on our heart. And I'm looking at an amazing picture of Jesus actually just covered in wounds now. But that moment I was looking at a crucifix and I realised that I had crucified Jesus. And I was just transfixed by this God who loved me so much as he poured out his life for me. And I started crying for the first time since I was 10. All those years ago, I'd never shed a tear since my parents told me that they were getting divorced. I came out of that talk and I think my heart had been opened to just wanting what God wanted. And I said a prayer to Our Lady and I just said, what is it that your son wants me to do? And I felt a whisper in my heart, go to confession. I'd never been to confession in my life. I had broken every commandment there was, but somehow she gave me the courage. And I went to confession and I was there over an hour. And I left nothing out. I was completely honest. I didn't smudge anything. I didn't pretend that, you know, stuff didn't happen. I was just raw, completely emptying myself. And at the end of this confession, this priest puts his hand on my head. But it wasn't his hand, it was Christ's hand. I could feel the blood running down my face, Christ's blood. And I knew after that confession that I was completely and utterly forgiven by Jesus. You know, people talk about diets, and I could probably go on one now, but this was like losing 100 pounds in weight. It was just like so beautiful. I felt so free afterwards. I could hear the birds singing. I could feel the wind on my face. It was like the sin had killed me, but the confession had brought me back to life.